Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Got a little bit of something special for you first hour. Second hour, Jimmy will be here. Jimmy Akin will do open forum. So if you were tuning in to get your open forum question in, just hang on to the second hour and we'll get you connected with Jimmy. The first hour, we're going to talk a little bit about a word that you have heard, wellness, but we're going to talk about Christ-centered wellness to two women who have devoted their careers to that. Maybe you have heard of Reform Wellness, maybe you have not, but we have with us the founder of Reform Wellness, a holistic nutritionist, a wellness practitioner, a longtime educator, Jackie Mulligan. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having us.
Can you before we'll introduce Dr. Bridget in a second, but
Sure.
What is Reform Wellness?
Reform is a Christ-centered wellness practice. We merge faith and functional health together. And so our real goal is to bring as many people to the Lord for healing as possible.
Praise God for that. It's something that we've been noticing here at Catholic Answers is that it does seem like the church is little by little rediscovering that Christ's ministry was, among other things, a healing ministry. We forgot him as a healer for a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is so beautiful when we remember that he is the divine physician and that he wants to heal us and that we just need to give him permission to do so.
Our other guest, Dr. Vanderwoody, is the Reform's chief wellness officer. She's a neuropathic medicine doctor.
Naturopathic, yes.
What did I say? Neuropathic?
Neuropathic, that's
what
right.
What the heck is that?
Close.
I just invented that, I think. Sorry.
That's okay.
Doctor, you on your bio it says Dr. Bridget. Is that how you prefer?
Yeah, typically I go by Dr. Bridget.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Vanderwoody's a little bit of a mouthful.
So how long have you been involved in this Christ-centered wellness movement?
I have been with Reform for almost 3 years now. Prior to that, I studied and was working in a more secular, holistic environment in holistic medicine. But I grew up Catholic and it was a big part of my life. So really Reform is the perfect combination for me of everything that I love about health and the human body and everything I love about our faith. So
you said in your answer the magic word that half of people hear it, they freak out, and half of people hear it and they are fascinated by it. Do you know what word that I'm referring to?
Holistic?
Holistic.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So what does that mean? What are we talking about when we say
Yeah.
holistic? Is it magical or new agey?
No, I think that it is really the human person. We are a whole, right? We're body and soul, material and immaterial. And I think that maybe the word holistic has been a little bit misused or abused or just defined in different ways in different circles. But I think that as Catholics, we have every much a right to use the word holistic as a whole person in the way that we were created to be. So I think that it can be a little bit of a buzzword, and some people don't really understand what we mean by it. But at Reform, we just mean as the whole person, body and soul. And so anything we do to reform your health, we want to do in a way that considers the whole person.
And do you think, and either of you can take this question, do you think that the desire for something that's holistic comes from the fact that our healthcare system is kind of atomizing? That is, it treats problems, but isn't so good with people.
Yeah, I think that there is an innate desire to get to the root cause of disease and not just focus on the symptom. I think there's also an innate desire to allow the Lord into our healing, whether we know it or not.
888-318-7884 is the number. Should have given you that before. If you've got questions about Christ-centered wellness, 888-318-7884. I mean, I guess in addition to the word holistic, the word wellness, I think it's a word you hear all the time. It's almost robbed of its meaning because it's used so just interchangeably in various different situations. What do you mean by it?
We often say that we redefine wellness as body and soul. And I think you're right. In a lot of ways, the world has given this description or definition to health or wellness that is solely based on physical health, aesthetics, performance, success, things that are fleeting. And we desire at Reform to reclaim that and redefine that in a way that is reflective of how we were created in the Lord's in the Lord's real definition of it, and also to dignify the gift of a human body and life that we were given.
You know, Jackie, when I hear you talk about it, it doesn't sound like you just grafted on some new age ideas onto a kind of a Christian language. It sounds like you have a different kind of, like the foundation in Christ you mention every time you give an answer.
That's because that's the truth.
Okay.
But it's because I had a really deep experience when I was first starting Reform. I built Reform in adoration, and it was out of a place where I knew that I was very capable, and therefore I was successful, as the world would describe it, and I was striving, but I was really tired. And this was just in my late 20s, and I felt like the world was keeping me really hungry. And the only place that I felt peace and really seen and known, and that I could be satiated, was with the Lord and His real presence in the Eucharist. And with more and more time there, I realized that He is the source and summit, in fact, and that for me to be well, He needs to be at the center of my life, but also my health, and that there's nothing in my health that He doesn't want to be a part of.
Right.
And so that's why it keeps circling back to Him.
Well, and again, for either of you can take this, but there's this this very Christian idea of taking up your cross and following. And so, you know, we're not prosperity gospel Christians. Because that's a kind of gospel that denies the cross's place in each life. But we're also, sometimes I think that focus on the cross can take away from the focus on the fact that, you know, I always repeat this, whenever we're talking about healing, in Matthew's gospel, He went about healing everyone. Yeah. Like it specifically says healing everyone. And I think that's a message for us that, yes, He went to the cross and He wants us to carry our cross, but He never stopped being a healer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we love to reflect on John 10:10 when He calls us to life in abundance. And I think that maybe that can be misused for prosperity gospel's sake. But the reality is that He does call us to be well and to live abundantly. And as we like to say, to live fully alive. And we really believe that to live fully alive in the fullness of the way that the Lord created us is to live both the cross and the joy and the healing and the health, right? So it's very much both, and it's both the suffering that we, of course, will continue to endure, and it's also the life and healing that is available to us, you know, in the Lord's will, in the ways that He wills to do that for each of us. But it's not either or, it's really both and so, yes, absolutely there will be suffering, but there's also hope for health and healing and to live life fully and abundantly.
888-3187-884, 888-3187-884. Back at the very beginning of the pandemic, remember the pandemic? And when they shut the world down, a lot of people were relieved. It was a weird reaction. A lot of people had this sense of, you know, before it became a burden having the world shut down, it was kind of a little vacation for everybody for a minute. And it was weird to see it because it was almost like the whole world realizing that modern life is a burden. It's hard. Every day of it is hard.
Yeah.
This is something that we talk about daily at Reform. We have coined a term that is a Reform way of life, which means a Christ-centered life. And so many people will take our course and start living in a way that really puts emphasis and centrality in the Lord. And they'll often say, like, wow, this is really radical. Like, we can't believe what you're doing. And Dr. Bridget and I will often say, no, the world is radical. What we're doing is not. We're turning to simplicity as we were designed to and called to. And I think it's really hard to even have the awareness of your health or the awareness of what you crave when you are in the rat race of the world and really distracted and sick.
Yeah. And there's a connection between a sick society and sick people. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think unfortunately, I think in a lot of ways the culture that we live in just perpetuates illness, especially when it comes to stress. And, we've just put so much emphasis in productivity and activity and success in every term of the word, really. And I think we've just forgotten that it's okay to just live a simple, ordered life that is conducive to healing. And it's hard to break away from what everyone around you is doing, and even within your own family, to live in a different way. But we've seen it in our own lives and in so many people that we work with that, it's worth it and it's possible.
Reformwellness.co is their website. It's a young apostolate. They can't afford the M yet, so it's reformwellness.co. And I would ask you one thing, then we'll take a break and we'll come back and do calls, all right? And the number is 888-318-7884. If you want to talk about Christ-centered wellness, you want to talk about how to find that, what that means, whatever your question is, you are welcome here. You don't have to be Catholic to call. 888-318-7884. And if I go over to reformwellness.co, you have something called the foundational course. Will you just tell me what that is? And then
Sure. We have our foundational course is called Reform Online, and it's 12 weeks long. It's rolling admission, which means that you can take it at any point. And it is designed to give tools and education on how to live out our wellness pillars rooted in Christ.
And anybody can take it anytime? You just...
Correct.
All right. Very cool. That's reformwellness.co. We have two wonderful guests here with us. First, Jackie Mulligan, the founder of Reform Wellness, and Dr. Bridget Vanderwoody, who's Reform's Chief Wellness Officer and a doctor of naturopathic, not neuropathic medicine, which is something I made up. All right. We'll take a quick break. Right back with your calls, 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com. EWTN uses the power of radio to reach people whenever and wherever they're searching for answers to questions about their Catholic faith. EWTN radio is heard on over 500 domestic and international AM and FM radio affiliates. For a complete list of programs and how to hear EWTN radio, visit EWTN.com and click radio. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Bit of a shift of gears for us this afternoon, but as you've heard me say over the recent months and years, it has become more and more obvious to me doing this job how much the healing power of Jesus Christ has been neglected, and people are rediscovering it. And we're always excited when we find Catholics rediscovering the healing Christ and connecting with him and connecting him to others in a way that is entirely consistent with the whole history of the church. It's like finding a gem that's been buried for a long time. And Jackie Mulligan started doing that by starting Reform Wellness, which you can find at reformwellness.co on the internet, and I hope you will check it out. So here's the person listening, and I just want to ask you about this person, Jackie, the person who says, you know what? I got small kids. I am so overwhelmed. I have no time for this wellness stuff. Or I am working myself to the bone trying to get this, business, straightened out, and so I can pay my employees each week. And I got no time for this. It's not for me. Maybe at a different point in my life. What do you say about that?
I would say that nobody is disqualified from the call to wholeness and holiness. And that is something that I had to really own and allow to take deep root in my own heart as a truth from the Lord, that he intentionally designed me and desired for me to be fully alive in him, even though fully alive looks really different in certain seasons. But regardless of vocation or current state of health or past or religion or anything that we think are barriers for us receiving the gift of healing from the Lord, nobody is disqualified from this call to wholeness and holiness. And in fact, I think it's the greatest gift we can give ourselves is just allowing that desire to take root without even doing anything else.
Really, just the desire for his healing, the desire to have it. Just start there.
Yeah, the desire to really live from your identity. Often, before we even teach people about our 9 wellness pillars, which we can talk about, we will just invite them to reconsider who they are in the Lord and invite them to reflect on how would you eat, how would you pray, how would you connect with other people if you remembered that you're a beloved daughter or son of Christ. And that just changes things.
It does. Yeah. I mean, I suppose almost everything we do in the course of a day would be transformed in one way or another if we could consciously know ourselves as the beloved son or daughter of Christ. Yeah. A father who loves us. So do you, as a doctor, do you treat sick people? Do you treat well people? Like, what is your practice?
Well, here in Reform, we really focus on a lot of lifestyle components to healing and really reforming and healing parts of our life and our behaviors and our habits that are either supportive or not for health. So we don't do a lot of specific diagnosis or treatment of things. It's rather more of a comprehensive approach to changing these basic components of our health physically and spiritually. But I just want to echo the point about the desire. Our scripture that we love to reflect on at Reform is, when Jesus asked the man at the pool, do you want to be well? And I think it's such a good reminder that he does ask each of us that question in one way or the other. Do you want to be well or not? And I think that sometimes we disqualify ourselves or we excuse ourselves or, we come up with all sorts of reasons why it's not the right time to want to be well. And, I think the reality is that it's really never the perfect time to
this
change
guy
your life.
if I'm thinking of the same guy you are, it was like 30 years.
38 years. Yeah.
Somebody always is in front of me. Come on, somebody's always in front of you.
Yeah.
There was a day where you could have made it.
Yeah, but that's all of us, right? We want to give all sorts of reasons why we're not able to do something. And so anyway, it's just a good scriptural reminder of that.
And it's wonderful that Jesus just heals him.
Mm-hmm.
But it came from the desire.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 888-318-7884. The man came every day. He had some kind of desire. He just couldn't. He couldn't close the deal with the angel. He needed the Lord to come in person.
Which is what we all need. We need him. we need him to come into the center.
So, how do you see your ministerial life, or this apostolic life of trying to bring the wellness in Christ that Christ wants us to have? Do you see this as something that you want to bring to other Catholics, or want to bring as Catholics to a wider world?
Both and.
Okay.
I think that, as we had just discussed, wholeness and holiness are for everyone. And so we believe that Reform is for everyone. And so there's really not one audience that we choose to connect with. Of course, we come alive when there's others who understand what we're saying in an immediate way. But there is no greater gift than watching another person receive the invitation to bring the Lord into the center of their lives. And I think that I could probably speak for Dr. Bridget and myself to say that is the greatest part of what we do is being able to encounter people encountering the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add that really we have people in our community from all in different parts of the spectrum of faith. Some that are fully Catholic and have been for a very long time, living their faith very fully, and some who are maybe Catholic but haven't been practicing, and some non-Catholic. So there is quite a spectrum of different faiths and religions that we've gotten to work with. But I think the beauty of the truth is that it is universal and it's applicable for everybody, regardless of really their faith.
888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Our guests are Jackie Mulligan, the founder of Reform Wellness, and Dr. Bridget Vanderwoody, the doctor, the chief wellness officer at Reform Wellness. 888-318-7884. Whatever your question is, whether you are Catholic or not, you are welcome to call here. So I think there is a kind of like the idea that you're expressing is one that I am entirely sympathetic to, which is that Christ wants to heal everyone and wants his healing hands to touch everyone that needs those healing hands. But many people will not in this lifetime experience the miraculous lifting of the cancer that they're struggling with, or the eczema, or whatever it might be. So how do you make sense of that? Make sense of the fact that God has come among us as a healer, but still illness persists?
Yeah, I think this is something that I've wrestled with just even in my own training, and just trying to, think about, why is it that, what's the point? What's the point of trying to, to better our health physically or spiritually, but in particularly physically, if we know that we're fallen humans and that we're always going to suffer? And I think that something that has helped me align that is that it's very similar in the spiritual life. Like, we know we are never going to reach full perfection on this side of heaven, right? But every day we get up again and we try over and over and over again to renew our efforts to move closer to holiness and to virtue. And I think it's the same with physical health. We, though we may, never experience perfect physical health on this side of heaven, there's still value in making choices that will support, the gift of our body and that will honor the dignity of our body. So I don't think that it has to be one or the other. And I think that that's something that's hard for us to wrap our brains around when it comes to wellness. We think of it either as all or nothing. Either I have perfect health and I'm in the perfect condition, or I'm not going to try, because what's the point? And I think that I think there's a lot of freedom in realizing that ultimately, the human experience is somewhere in between the two of those extremes.
A lot of people will probably, and you maybe experience this, will say, I have tried. I've tried everything. I've tried to break this cycle, whatever the cycle is, whether it's a moral problem that they have, or a spiritual problem, or a physical addiction, that kind of thing. There are many people who, with goodwill, have tried. So what do you offer to those people?
I think the key that you are repeating is that I tried. And it's a two-person job. And sometimes when we invite the Lord into our healing journey, we kind of throw in the towel, and to some degree, as Exodus 14:14 says, let the Lord fight for you. You need only to be still. There's beauty in that. There's beauty in the initial surrender. But ultimately, we have to control the things we can and take part in our healing journey as well. But also leave that space to be a vessel for the Lord to work through us and to heal us. And then on the opposite side of the coin, there can be a deep self-reliance where I'm going to heal, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to X, Y, Z. And we totally box the Lord out, even though we're asking him to intervene and intercede, but we don't allow space for him.
I can see, especially, I don't know, we live in a very self-reliant society, almost where self-help is a whole entire industry. You're not in the self-help industry.
We are not.
Yeah, I think self-help has been, again, sort of misused in the world. And ultimately, I think that there's a lot of self-reliance and self-seeking and selfishness in the world of self-help, depending on where you are looking. But I think that the freedom that comes in a Christ-centered approach to wellness is that we are taking care of ourselves and honoring the gift of our bodies and striving to better our souls through in growing in virtue, because we've identified, in Christ first and not as just ourselves outside of him.
Right. Yeah. It seems almost like a very fine line, but it's not a fine line. It's just one that's hard to find.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that whatever obscures it, the distance between relying on God and kind of giving lip service to that, but relying on myself, it's an important line we got to cross.
Yeah, and it's one that really demands humility. In a sense, and
forget it. I'm not going to be that. You've ruined it for me, Jackie. I don't have any of that. No, tell me about that.
Well, I think the Blessed Mother really can give us the best idea of humility, in that the Lord asked really big things of her, but also really wanted to do big things for her. And it was in Mary's humility to say, how can this be? I'm not equipped, but yes, I want you at the center of my life. Yes, I want to do this. And I think that's what the Lord is so patient in allowing us to give him our yes. And so I think that's the question, is back to what Dr. Bridges said, do you want to be well? And if it's yes, it's okay, well, will you give me an inch of your day? Will you give me an inch of your health? Will you give me an inch of your life?
Right.
And you'll soon realize that that's the best inch that you have.
You said that you started this in adoration. I have personally found that's a big part of turning it over to him. It continues to be a big part for you, and you recommend it to people?
Yes, if there was a way to set up camp there, I would be there. Yeah. Yes, I believe that there is no greater place we can spend our time or find our healing than in the Eucharistic Lord.
888-318-7884, the number. I am going to go to calls. I promise I will. Reformwellness.co is where you can go and find out what Dr. Bridget and Jackie are talking about here. You can check out the foundational course where you can get an orientation in Christ-centered wellness. But if you want to just talk about Christ-centered wellness, whether you are Catholic or not, whether you are Christian or not, we are happy to have your call. 888-318-7884. 888-31-TRUTH. We'll take a very quick break and right back with more conversation about Christ-centered wellness on Catholic Answers Live.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity in The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Are you ready to defend your faith in a world of unbelief? Join us at the 9th Annual Catholic Answers Apologetics Conference. This year's theme, I Believe in God, and it'll help you provide clear and charitable answers to atheism, agnosticism, and plain old indifference. Don't miss what promises to be the event of the season. Join us in San Diego from September 21st through 24th as we welcome our special guest, Dr. Scott Hahn, and an all-star lineup of great Catholic speakers. Spend quality time with your favorite Catholic Answers apologists and enjoy 4 days of fun, fellowship, and adoration of the Almighty. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 888-291-8000 to register. Enter promo code EARLY and save $50. That's CatholicAnswersConference.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Keller, your host. Second hour, Jimmy's going to be here with us. We'll do open forum with Jimmy Akin for the entire second hour, and your calls welcome then. Your calls also welcome this hour as we talk about a topic that more and more is dear to my heart because I've just sitting here at this desk getting to meet people little by little over the last few years to whom it has dawned on, I don't even know if I'm forming a sentence right now, but that Christ is a healer, and that when it comes to pornography addictions, people are out there doing healing. Addiction to chemicals, people are out there with Christ as a healer. All kinds of marital issues, physical issues. Christ wants to heal, and that's why I'm just delighted to have Jackie and Dr. Bridget here with us for this hour. They are from Reform Wellness, which you can find out about, again, at reformwellness.co. I have not gone to callers. Would you both feel comfortable if we went to callers for a little bit?
Absolutely.
The number is 888-318-7884. Patricia's in Pennsylvania, watching on YouTube. Patricia, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, wow, that was quick. Okay. Are you all aware that the media is trying to promote the idea that the majority of our culture, of our all people, are really seeking self-help as opposed to Christ help or God help. To make that distinction. Otherwise, if we're not aware of that, we're carrying a message that is promoting other than Christ help or God help. I do believe in my own experience. I have seen 12-step groups with that conundrum facing it. The 12 steps are all about surrender.
Yeah.
And yet I hear people talking about I can do this. So I'm in there and I'm talking about surrender, But I think we can actually end up carrying the media message by saying we are in this culture that is so not other-oriented, but self-oriented.
All right.
As opposed to God.
Let me get your response, Patricia.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we agree, Patricia. I do think that the world has really, taken the term self-help and, defined it in ways that may or may not be aligned with what we believe as Christians and Catholics. But I think that there's also a lot of opportunity. There's an opportunity to reclaim, the term and the idea of self-help as something that is rightly ordered, that is centered on the Lord, and to bring Him into the center of all of it. Because if we are caring for ourselves, to the exclusion of the Lord, then really what are we doing? Ultimately, that's going to benefit our souls. So I think that. Yes, the world and the media tells us all sorts of things, and yet we know that we have the truth in the gospel, and we can reclaim, taking care of ourselves in a rightly ordered way, and to witness that to the world, because I think that though it might be misguided, I do think that many in the world and, maybe in other secular environments, they are looking for something that they don't even realize, and maybe they haven't been able to identify it yet, but their practices of self-help and self-care are really just an indication that they're looking for something much greater, and we have the truth of what that is. And so yes, to be bold in bringing the element of surrender to the world, but also to have compassion in the sense that they're looking for something that they might need a little bit of help finding.
Patricia, thank you very, very much. Appreciate that question. I'm going to keep going and try to get as many on as I can with Jackie Mulligan and Dr. Bridget. 888-318-7884 is the number. Stephanie's in St. Louis, Missouri, listening on 96.7 FM. Stephanie, welcome. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I have been suffering from post-long COVID syndrome for over a year and a half, and I have chronic fatigue syndrome. I feel very exhausted trying to go to Mass, and it's important to me to do that, though, and to make sure my children go. However, I struggle between knowing if I'm supposed to push myself to go spiritually, or if it's best for me to get rest so that I'm able to care for myself and my children.
All right.
Thank you for this question, Stephanie, and we empathize with you a lot in lots of ways, and there is certainly a challenge, I think, just to get to Mass in general sometimes, let alone adding the addition of suffering from chronic fatigue. I think that this is where there's really not a simple answer, but there is opportunity here for you to control the things you can. And I think that there's often places in our lives where we can pare down and simplify in order to prioritize the Lord again in our lives so that we can have the capacity to attend Mass on Sunday or however frequently you would like to go. And so often, if you're sick and you truly can't get there, the Lord knows that. He knows your desire, and that's okay. I think that one of the things we're called to do is to be aware and radically honest in our assessment of what is happening on the other days that I could potentially pare down a bit to reduce stress, to ask for help, to get more sleep, to nourish my body in ways that will create space and capacity for me to get to Mass on Sunday. And so I would just invite you to pray about some ways that you can continue to surrender and rest in the Lord, but also what on your part could you do to maybe pursue Him in a a priority that maybe hasn't been present in your life just yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. God bless you. Thank you so much for the call. The number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. So I can ask, and either of you may answer this one, but if you take what you've done at Reform and you say, well, there's a model here or an image of relating with Christ as our healer, as the divine physician. If the whole church were to recover that, what would that look like?
We would be healed. We'd all be in heaven dancing together.
Well, all right.
I think that there would be peace. And we'll start with that.
Wow.
Peace is the enjoyment of order. St. Thomas Aquinas taught us that. And when we are living our lives centered in the Lord, there is order. And with order, there is peace. And with peace, there's healing.
Wow, it's fascinating what you say, because I didn't know that the first word out of your mouth was going to be peace, but the peace is it seems to me that it's so fundamentally missing from the world of busyness and television and all the other things that we have, that the one thing you don't get from all that is peace. And I don't think I have anything else to say about it. I mean, it's just that word really jumped out at me when you said that, because I do think that's the thing we are so hungry for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that
You're just agreeing because I thought it was such a great answer.
No, it's
Come
true.
on,
I mean, so much of our life would be so much more simple and so much more peaceful if we eliminated, all the excess. And I think that that's really what there's an invitation here for. If we want to heal, especially if we want our bodies to heal or our souls to heal, we have to create an environment that is conducive to healing. And most of us live in a rat race and in an environment that is not conducive to any sort of healing and peace. And yet we wonder over and over again why we're dealing with this issue or that issue. And yet there's really no room for healing to happen physically or spiritually because our lives are so full.
But the person who has peace in their life is a wonderful advertisement for the gospel. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's a better advertisement for that. Everybody wants that.
It's contagious, right? I mean, you
Right.
notice it right away. It's so contrary to what we see so often in the world.
It's sort of what we witness when you enter into a convent or a friary, and there's just a flood of peace and joy.
Yeah.
And it's contagious.
Right, exactly. Beth's in Kentucky listening to EWTN on Channel 130 Sirius XM satellite radio. Beth, we're so glad you're here. Go ahead with your question.
Well, I am in the car, so I can't go to the website right now, but I was interested in more information on how the program works. You mentioned the fundamental program and what all is involved in that. I am not Catholic yet, but I'm seriously thinking of being on my way to that. And so I'm listening and reading and doing lots of things I've never done before as homework. And I'm liking what I'm being exposed to. So I think it's in my future I may have found my tribe.
Oh,
I love that.
I would like to hear more about how the program actually works.
Beautiful. Well, thank God for you sharing and for your desire. It's so beautiful, and we'll be praying for you. But just as a little bit of a snapshot, if you will, Reform Online is an online course, and it's 12 weeks long. So you, at the time that you register, you have 12 weeks to move through the course material. And essentially how it works is every week you learn about a different pillar of your health. And so that might be faith or nutrition or sleep or stress management. And you learn, about a different topic each week. And then we have live hours together on Zoom twice a month where we answer questions, we offer guidance and advice. And we also are joined by a priest or religious every month to give a little bit more spiritual formation and support for the soul. And so right now it's primarily online. We also do seminars throughout the country in person. So maybe, God willing, someday we'll be close enough that we could, offer that as well to you. But you will learn more on the website. But essentially, it's a 12-week program that you can register for anytime. You can do it from anywhere on your own schedule, and we will be along the way for you to support you.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about it. I do have to say that I am very much enjoying the catechism.
Oh, beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
I mean, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like there's another hidden gem of Catholicism. People could read the. I'm so happy you found it, Beth. Beth, I'm going to go to a break, but don't hang up, because if you'd like, I'd like to send you 2 books. We have a book called Why We're Catholic. And if you'd like that one, I'd like to send it to you. We also have a book called The Words of Eternal Life, True Happiness and Where to Find It. If you want them, they're yours. We can send them to Kentucky. Just hang on and we'll get you. We got to take a quick break. Right back with more on wellness in the person of Jesus Christ right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, when we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue. Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Hi friends, Janet Williams here. Join me every Wednesday on Women of Grace Live as I welcome New Age researcher and blogger for Women of Grace, Sue Brinkman. Sue and I will be talking about all the wacky things that could distract you from your faith. Psychics, yoga, Reiki, crystals, acupuncture, Ouija boards, tarot cards, and astral traveling are just a few of the stranger things we discuss. That's why we call it Wacky Wednesday. So join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. If you read the Gospels, one of the things that people are often shocked by is just how much Jesus heals. It's constant. It's obvious that to get his ministry started, he begins by healing. And in addition to calling people to repent and believe in the good news, he goes around healing people. And that's what makes clear that he's the Messiah and draws the crowds out. And then he healed everyone who came to him. And so this part of Christ's ministry is not to be neglected, but is central to what he does. And our 2 guests today are quite familiar with just how central it is and doing a beautiful job of sharing that Christ-centered, the idea of Christ-centered wellness. Reform Wellness is the organization. You can check it out at reformwellness.co. Jackie Mulligan is the founder, and Dr. Bridget is the, don't tell me, I'm going to get it. Don't tell me Dr. Bridget is the... Okay, what is it?
A naturopathic doctor.
No, I know that. I know that you're a naturopathic doctor, but your
Chief
job...
Wellness Officer.
Chief Wellness Officer, yes. And you're the Chief Eucharistic Officer?
I am.
And what does that mean, Chief Eucharistic
That means
Officer?
that I am going to bring as many souls to the Eucharist as I possibly can.
Oh, Jackie, God bless you. That's beautiful. Let's go to Cynthia in Houston, Texas, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Cynthia, awful glad you're here. Go ahead with your question.
Hello. Good evening to everyone. Yes, my name is Cynthia. And I just need to listen that. But anyway, I suffered 2 brain aneurysms in 21.
Okay, so a couple years ago you had 2 brain aneurysms. It's just kind of hard for people to hear you. If you could get a little closer to the phone, it would help us because we do want to be helpful to you. So you've suffered brain aneurysms.
2. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have been having some problems with this in the sense that I've gone to the Lord with it. I am a Christian. I'm not a Catholic, but I'm a Christian.
Okay.
And I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard for me to accept this thing because, I know the Lord is a healer because I do read the Bible and people of old, they went to the Lord for whatever that they needed, and
yes.
The Lord answered. But
right.
I just say, God, why did this happen to me? I know, I'm not above these things happening because it happens every day.
No, but you want to know why, Cynthia. It seems perfectly normal. And I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to get a response because I said it's a little hard to hear you. And so what Cynthia said was she suffered 2 brain aneurysms a couple years ago. She trusts the Lord. She knows the Lord's a healer, but she still has that burning why, Lord? Why do you allow this to happen to me?
I'm going to start from the spiritual perspective, and I'll pass it over to Dr. Bridget to talk a little bit about some of the things that that you can do on the physical side. So first, thank you for sharing. Thank you for your beautiful witness of faith and trust in the Lord as you continue to heal. And as you were speaking so beautifully, Cynthia, the words that were coming to me were, lean not on your own understanding. And I think that this is where we have to trust the Lord, remember who he is and who we are in him, and that he will not permit and allow suffering that is not going to be used for our sanctity. And so I feel very strongly that he has you in this particular season for your own sanctity, for an increase of your virtue, and for a very particular reason. And so with that doesn't mean there aren't certain things that you can do to support your health journey. But I think resting in the Lord's time and not your own understanding of the why just yet, because it hasn't been revealed.
And Dr. Bridget?
Just one thing that I always love to encourage people with when you're dealing with any chronic or significant diagnosis of any sort is to not forget that there's so many things we can do to support the health of our whole person, even outside of that thing. And so regardless of what the diagnosis or the struggle is, to always lean on all the different areas that are supportive for our health. And so as we've mentioned here today, we like to do that through the framework of what we call our 9 wellness pillars. So these are different areas of your health that we can support for healing all throughout the body and soul, regardless of what the specific diagnosis is. So these are faith, nutrition, sleep, stress management, community, play, personal growth, space, and functional movement. And so these are all areas of your life that we can, commit to supporting with a little bit more consistency to support healing for the long term.
Cynthia, this usually happens when we have new guests on. All the calls have piled up here at the end, so I have to keep moving. But I hope that was helpful to you, and we will certainly pray for you as you recover from the aneurysms. God bless you, sister. I'm going to go to Ron in Indiana, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Ron, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question.
All right, thanks for taking my call. I was wondering what the price of the 12-week program is, and after you take it, if you can buy one for a friend, if there's any kind of discount.
Oh, thank you so much for this question, Ron, and thanks for calling in. So the cost of our 12-week program is $695, and so that is a combination of functional health education and spiritual formation, and we provide you with tools that you will learn over the course of 12 weeks, but utilize for a lifetime. And so it breaks down to be about $58 a week, just for budget purposes. And yes, we would love for you to be able to share it with a friend or take it with a friend. We have certain opportunities to do so. And we also provide scholarships for those who are otherwise not able to afford the class.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I was about to give out the number, but there's no point. There's too many people on the line now. I got to just keep working my way through the calls here. Let's go to Victoria in Indiana. Victoria, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for our guests.
Thank you for taking my call. Good evening to you both. My question, I'll make it quick. I have a lot of health problems, and throughout the years, I was alone with a lot of it, but I walked with Jesus, and my cross was beautiful. It was heavy, but it was beautiful. And I've learned just to walk with Jesus, and I listen to him, and I gave up on doctors I've been around. And I know what makes the body work and don't, and I listen to him. But there are times that I fail. And then in those times, my blood pressure drops and I can't think and I can't function, or something, a reaction in my body happens. And I don't know because I'm trying so hard to keep it up. And I always feel him, and I know my suffering, I will take it, and I feel it, and I walk with him, and I offer for others, and I know the beautifulness of a cross. But when I fail, I don't see him, I don't feel him. Does he forgive me for putting that bearer?
Well, hang on, Victoria. Well, let's get a response, Jackie or Dr. Bridget.
Victoria, I think that something to keep in mind, it's so beautiful, this desire you have to walk only with Jesus and to really so beautifully carry your cross. It's such a grace that you are able to see your suffering in that light, and to know that there is grace, and that in our suffering the Lord is the closest to us. And so what a gift that you're able to see that. But also, it's helpful to keep in mind that he also sends others to journey with us along the way. And so, though we want to follow him and to to go wherever it is that he leads us, and to bear whatever crosses he sends us, he also sends us people along the way to help us. And so, to keep in mind that. It may be that there are people out there, providers out there even, or maybe even friends or family members that can journey with us in the suffering. And it doesn't mean that we have to, lose sight of the beauty and the grace in suffering. There can be both suffering and joy and healing. And so we want to just make sure we're keeping in mind that it's both the cross and the joy of living fully alive. And so I would encourage you that if you have, access to providers or friends or supporters along the way, to really allow them to support you in the journey, especially when you feel the most alone.
Can I add one thing to Dr. Bridget's beautiful response, and that is that the Lord knows our hearts. He made them, and so he knows your beautiful desire, and he most certainly forgives you because he does know your heart. So you can rest in that peace.
Victoria, thank you very, very much for the call. Our two guests come from, let's see, I was going to give out the website again. I'll do it again. Reform Wellness, which you can find out about it, reformwellness.co. The M.
It's coming.
Is it coming? All right, good. That's under construction.
It's under construction.
Because everyone else in the world is .com.
We're creating something new.
I guess you are. Something that... well, I'm sure that lots of people find you. Reform. Or I found out if I just typed in the search bar Reform Wellness Catholic, it brought me right to you. Mm-hmm. So you can search for it. So what's next? What are you going to do? I mean, you're growing Reform. What's the plan for growing this ministry?
Well, we have the best business coach. His name is Jesus, mm-hmm. and so he guides all of our steps. And so. Right now, we're feeling this call to continue to grow online and connect with as many people as possible that he'll let us from all over the world, which is the greatest gift. But we are craving to be in person and to offer more in person in the form of classes and seminars and really prayer. So you can stay tuned for more of that opportunity coming from Reform.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, actually, because that personal touch, that interaction, there is something very Christ-like. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like people always say, well, if St. Paul were around today, he'd use all these tools, and he would. I'm sure he would. But that doesn't mean that the physical touch and proximity aren't important in sharing. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you both for coming in. Are you off to somewhere else good now, or?
Well, we are celebrating the Feast of St. James tonight. We recently walked part of the Camino.
Did you really?
We did.
Did you walk it too?
Yeah. We did it together.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
How beautiful.
That's great.
I'm just so excited that I got to talk with you. I think that the Christ-centered wellness is, as I said, a rediscovery of a beautiful part of our faith.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely.
We can't wait.
All right, very good. Hey, Jimmy's coming up. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. It's open forum, so you can ask him whatever you like, and the lines will be full very shortly. I want to say again that reformwellness.co is where you can go to find out all about what our guests are up to and have been up to and what they have developed. And it's quite impressive what they have developed. Jackie Mulligan, the founder, and Dr. Bridget
Chief Wellness Officer.
Chief Wellness Officer.
It's just Dr. Bridget. She's the best.
Dr. Bridget, thank you very, very much. We'll take a quick break right back with Open Forum. Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks so much for being here with us. As promised, an hour of open forum this hour with Jimmy Akin. You are welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Jimmy, of course, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers and the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, now brought to you from Arkansas. Hey, Jimmy Akin.
Howdy, Cy Kellett. How's it going?
Very, very well, thank you. How's it going in the new joint?
Oh, it's going great. I've been doing lots of organizing, and so things are starting to get organized. And I want to say that's a very hip shirt that you're wearing there, Cy Kellett.
Thank you.
It looks like it would have been very hip in 1963.
This is my I'm a hip 1960s dude shirt. Thank you so much for noticing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going for. Like I just got off the set where I was shooting an episode of Star Trek, and now I'm off in my Corvette.
I was thinking a little earlier than Star Trek. That started in 66.
Oh,
so
maybe My Favorite Martian.
Looks like a really, My Favorite Martian would work.
Yeah. Well, thank you for noticing, Jimmy. Hey, what do you got tomorrow on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World? What's dropping?
Well, nothing's dropping tomorrow. The most recent thing that dropped this last Friday, because this is Tuesday.
Well, that's not usually how we do this, but yes, okay.
Yeah. The last Friday, we had a story about a woman who began experiencing interior locutions. A couple of voices said that they were former medical professionals who were trying to help her cure a serious medical condition that she had, and she urgently needed to address it. And it turned out the voices were absolutely right. So we talk about those and what they were. I even got a note from the psychiatrist involved in the case who listened to the episode and said that he thought the episode helped him better understand what had happened with his patient.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And he said he was going to add quality to his life by subscribing to my podcast, which of course is something everyone should do.
It does that. It has that effect.
But coming up this Friday, so in that case, it looks like the most, at least based on the facts reported, it looks like this was a case of departed souls communicating with a human to help the living human. And this Friday, we're going to be looking at communication and help for the deceased that goes the other way. We're going to be talking with a Dominican priest named Father Nathan Castle, who has a ministry to souls in purgatory, some of whom are stuck in the process. And he has a prayer ministry to help these souls move further in their progress towards God.
I don't know how I knew that this one was, I'd have known this for a little while, that this one was coming. We must have talked about it at some point, and I'm really looking forward to this one. I've been looking forward to finding out what Father's got, what he's up to. But that'll be Friday. And of course, Today is Tuesday. I don't know I guess it's summertime. I haven't gotten the day right lately. Remember Darren on Friday? I said, hey, tomorrow we got open forum. Join us then. And then I signed off. And Darren was like, are we doing an open forum on Saturday? It's like, I thought it was Wednesday.
Like Billy Pilgrim, you've just become unstuck in time.
I do that sometimes. 888-318-7884, the number. If you have a question for Jimmy Akin, you are very welcome to call. 888-31-TRUTH. Already callers on the line, Jimmy, so off we go, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
All right, let's go to Aaron in Hastings, Michigan, watching on YouTube. Aaron, welcome back. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
I know this is not right, and I'm trying to figure out how to decipher if it's the Lord speaking through the Catholic Church or if it's the enemy trying to confuse you.
So, Aaron, let me ask you a question because it'll affect how I position the answer. But what is your current religious perspective?
Right now I'm working at I'm actually out of the Sede Vacantis movement, but I feel like a tug to go back, which I know is not a good thing.
Yep, it's not a good thing. Okay, so you're coming from a fundamentally Catholic point of view, then.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have something different to say for someone who is not coming from a fundamentally Catholic point of view. And in essence, that would be to go back and review the evidences for the Catholic Church being the Church of Jesus Christ. But if you're already a committed Catholic, then you already accept that. It might not hurt to go back and review the evidences for the Catholic Church being the Church of Jesus Christ. But the fundamental thing is to realize, for someone who has a Catholic point of view, is to realize that the church is guided by Christ. Christ said that he was going to be with his appointed ministers and his church to the end of the age, and that means the end of the world. He promised that the Holy Spirit would guide his followers into all truth. And therefore, we have an ongoing magisterium that is guided by Christ and the Holy Spirit. And so when they use their teaching authority infallibly, they're protected from error to an absolute degree. And even when they don't use their teaching authority up to the level of infallibility, they're still guided by it. And so you can still fundamentally trust what the magisterium of the church says. It's not going to be the devil speaking to you through the church. It's going to be Christ and the Holy Spirit. Now, that's not to say there can't be individual areas that are non-infallible, where mistakes get made. That is possible. And the Holy See has acknowledged that. But that's the exception, not the rule. And so any rule that someone proposes that says the church is fundamentally misguided and is speaking for the devil, that's clearly inconsistent with the fact of the Catholic Church being the Church of Christ, that Christ and the Holy Spirit guides. We can, understand and deal with individual mistakes that are made by members of the magisterium when they're speaking non-infallibly, but fundamentally, even when they're speaking non-infallibly, they are guided by Christ and the Holy Spirit, and we can trust that, and we don't need to worry about, is the church fundamentally speaking for the devil? It's not. So I would review that principle and meditate on that. Now, if you're coming from a sedevacantist background, there may be individual issues that you need to work through to see, okay, so what's the status of this teaching? Is, how do we correctly put the pieces together? And we'd be happy to help you do that here, at Catholic Answers. You're welcome to call in the future with particular issues. But the fundamental underlying issue is that the Catholic Church is Christ's church, and he and the Holy Spirit guide it, so you can trust it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. That sounded like a satisfied customer. I hope it was, Aaron, but you know our number, so I'm sure you'll call back as you have follow-up questions. The number here is 888-318-7884. It's open forum this hour.
Star for you, Cy Kellett. You said it's slow. That's great.
I feel like I have improved at that. I feel like I have. There's been, yes.
Increased your slowness.
I have. I've accelerated my slowness. Yeah, completely. Let's go to Dallas, Texas. Nuela in Dallas, listening on 910 a.m. Welcome. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hello. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I turned on my air conditioner. So I know recently there's been a lot of things going around about UFOs and stuff. And I was looking at something the other day about hollow earth.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about it? And
oh, yeah.
If so, it's sort of scary in some ways because it could throw you off your faith a little bit, I think. So can you tell me a little what you think about it and how it would square up with our faith? And
okay.
If you don't mind, I'm going to hang up and listen off.
Yeah, turn that AC back on.
Before you do, Nuela, I need to ask a clarifying question. You mentioned UFOs and then you mentioned hollow earth. And those are two different theories. So how are they linked in your view?
So what I was looking at, and I should be quite honest with you, I'm in my car, so I can't pull up. I was looking at a pilot in the 1940s who was an American pilot, and he was an expeditionist in the North and South Poles. Mm-hmm. And as he was flying over, and I forget which pole it was, he saw a hole in the earth, and from there 2 spacecraft came out of it. And he went in, followed them, and went inside and saw another world inside, like with plants and trees and people, aliens living there.
Okay.
and that was reported, and he worked for the government, and so he was told not to speak about it, but he did write a diary.
Yeah, so there are very interesting stories that you hear like this, but thus far, none of them have been authenticated. And there is a known tendency for various folks to hoax things like this just for fun or for attention or sometimes even for money. And so we have to be careful. Just because someone says they did something doesn't mean they really did it. So just because someone says, I worked for the government and I flew over one of the poles and I saw an opening to the interior of the earth and I flew into it and saw this underground civilization with, plants and animals and trees and aliens living there. That doesn't mean they really did that. So we want to be careful. And even if they say I was told not to talk about it, well, if you were told that, you obviously did, but that still doesn't prove it. So, we want to be careful in what we just accept. Now, the idea of the hollow earth is something that goes back quite a while. There were speculations that even for a time, a number of centuries ago, were scientifically respectable. You had major scientists or natural philosophers, as they were then called, who were speculating that the earth might be hollow or have a series of concentric shells within it. And so at one point that was a scientifically respectable idea. But subsequent to the rise of modern science, one of the fields of science that developed is known as seismology. And seismology studies the seismic waves that are, when they get big, they're responsible for earthquakes. But it studies the seismic waves that travel through the earth. And as a result of those seismic waves, we can actually map the interior of the earth and figure out what's down there. And, because it's like when you have, let's say you have, if you think about it, let's say you have a bowl, and at the bottom of the bowl is some Jell-O, and on top of the Jell-O is some water. Well, Jell-O and water have different densities, and so if you shake the bowl, you'll see the surface that has the lower density of water shaking more violently than the more solid Jell-O. And by looking at that shaking, you could figure out, okay, there must be a layer down there of something that's more dense than what's on top. And seismologists can do effectively the same thing. When there are earthquakes and volcanoes that erupt and things like that, scientists can measure the vibrations that are going through the earth and build up a picture of, at least in general terms, what it's like on the inside of the earth. And based on that information, and we're still learning more about it, but based on that information, we have not been able to detect any sizable hollowness. Now, there are obviously caves in the Earth's surface, but at least to the resolution that our present seismographs are able to provide for us, we don't see any large open spaces in the earth. Also, we wouldn't expect to see them at the South Pole because there's a continent down there and it's been thoroughly mapped. We have people who live down there year round and they've mapped the whole continent and they study it. And we wouldn't expect to see an opening there. Also, at the top of the world, you wouldn't expect to see it either because there's an ocean there, and the ocean would fill in any such hole. Also, we have satellites that are looking down, and they're not seeing anything. Even when the North Pole is frozen, which it is much of the time, we would look down if there was an opening that was sizable enough to fly an airplane into, and we'd see it with our satellites. So I don't think that this particular story you've mentioned is one that is likely to be true. It's an interesting theory, and I plan to do a future episode of Mysterious World on it, but I don't think it's likely to turn out that there are any sizable openings in the earth. Now, could there be smaller openings that aliens live in? Well, sure. I mean, we have burrowing technologies, and And Elon Musk has a whole burrowing project called the Boring Project to build underground highways. And so it certainly would be possible that any advanced civilization would be able to hollow out a space for itself to live on the inside of the earth. So I can't rule that out. There is also another theory that's sort of a variation of this. The standard interpretation of UFOs that you often hear is what's known as the extraterrestrial hypothesis, which proposes that UFOs are craft that are built by biological beings that live on other planets in our universe. But there are alternatives to the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and one of them is known as the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. Now, it's possible that if intelligent aliens exist on other planets, it's possible they could have come here, and it's possible they could have burrowed out a space for themselves. But it's also possible, at least according to the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis, that there is a race of hidden beings who are from Earth. Maybe they forked with us in our evolutionary history at some point and started living underground, and these would be crypto-terrestrials. Kryptos is the Greek word for hidden. Terrestrial means from Earth, and so these would be hidden, or a hidden race that is from Earth, not from another planet. And there are some interesting things to say about the crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. I've read I've read books that deal with it, but and I plan to do a future episode of Mysterious World on it. But my guess is that just like the Hollow Earth theory is probably not accurate, I also think there's probably not a hidden race of humans or semi-humans living underground on Earth. But I have yet to look into it fully.
Noella, I hope that was helpful to you. Got to take a break. Right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Your questions, Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN takes you to the Knights of Columbus 141st Supreme Convention in Orlando, Florida. Join EWTN's Doug Keck and Jonathan Reyes of the Knights of Columbus as live coverage begins Tuesday, August 1st. Knights of Columbus 141st Supreme Convention beginning Tuesday, August 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern here on EWTN.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin's our guest. It's Open Forum, and your call is welcome. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. Jimmy's he's not dropping a new episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World tomorrow because it's not Friday. I'm just so used to Jimmy being here on Thursday. I just thought it was. But there's a good one coming this week. What's the priest's name, Jimmy?
Father Nathan Castle.
And this is about helping people out of purgatory.
Yes.
Looking forward to that one. Off we go now to Indiana. Walker is in Indiana, listening on 89.9 FM. Walker, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you, guys. I was just curious, I don't know if you have an answer for this, but what the Catholic view or opinion on Zionism was.
Okay, so we first need to define our terms because Zionism is something very specific, and it's basically the view that either the Jewish people have a right to the territory currently occupied by the present state of Israel, or at least that there should be, even if they don't have a right to it, that there at least should be a Jewish state in the territory presently occupied by Israel. And the Catholic Church really does not have a teaching on those issues. Sometimes you will have people appeal to passages in the Old Testament, where God makes a covenant and gives that land to the Israelites. That's why it's called the Promised Land, because God promised it to the Israelites. But there's an open question of, do they have a present right to it? And there are a number of possible answers to that question. One answer is that yes, they do. That's a perpetual covenant, and anytime they can take their land, they're welcome to it, even if they have to kick other people out of it or something like that. Another answer is no, they don't have a present right to it, because the promises of the Old Testament have been superseded by the New Testament. And a common understanding of this is that they have been inherited by the church. And so in a spiritual rather than a literal political sense. And so one could hold that in one way or another, the Old Testament promise of that land to the Israelite people has been superseded and is no longer operative, and therefore they don't have a right to it. Then there's a kind of middle position that one could hold, which would say, well, they have a right to it, but they don't have a right to it at the moment. And this view is actually common in some conservative Jewish circles. At the time that the Jewish state was founded back in 1948, a lot of conservative Jews would say, actually, we don't have a right to this land right now. When the Messiah comes, we'll have a right to it, and we'll have it in the Messianic age. But right now, God has made a covenant when he allowed the Romans to kick us out. He made a covenant with the Jewish people that they would be scattered among the nations, and they would God would protect them and guide them, and the Gentiles had an obligation not to persecute them too much. And so as long as the Gentiles have not done that, and as long as the Messiah has not come, we don't have a right to that land, not right now. We will have a right to it in the future, but not right now. A response that was proposed by some in the Jewish community back in 1948 to answer that claim was, well, we just went through the Nazi Holocaust that killed 6 million of us and decimated European Jewry. And that was the Gentiles persecuting us too much. Therefore, we now have a right to go and reclaim that land. All of these positions are ones that the Catholic Church really doesn't have a teaching on. Consequently, there is liberty of opinion on the issue of, do they have a right to the land? Is that right for now? Or even if they don't have a right to it, is it legitimate? Or should there be a Jewish state in the territory presently occupied by the nation of Israel? One of the things, so as I said, there's no teaching on this, but the church does have teachings on the rights of people to self-determination, to be able to choose their own form of government, and to not be dispossessed and things like that, and to have their rights respected. And that applies to the Jewish people. It also applies to the Palestinian people. And so consequently, the approach in terms of applying those teachings would be, at least for the present, that the church would advocate, would be there needs to be an equitable balance that gets struck between the rights of Jewish people and the rights of Palestinian people, and both of their rights need to be respected. Israeli rights do not trump Palestinian rights, and Palestinian rights do not trump Israeli rights. They both need to find a just and equitable solution, and that solution could take different forms. That's something that can be negotiated. Obviously, the nation of Israel has been around for like 75 years now, and it's firmly established enough that the idea of let's just kick all the Israelis out of Israel, that dog won't hunt. That would be too disruptive. And so the church would urge, given the fact that the state was created, whether or not it should have been, given the fact that it was created, there need to be solutions found that respect the rights of both Palestinians and Israelis so that they are both treated fairly and equitably.
I see. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Walker. Thanks very, very much. Appreciate the question. I'm actually a bit surprised at the number of lines open. I think because I was saying at the beginning that they would fill up quickly. But Jimmy Akin is here for open forum.
You're saying you put a curse on this episode.
Not so much a curse as maybe the kibosh. I think I might have put the kibosh on it. 888-318-7884 is the number. Jimmy Akin's the guest, which means you can ask whatever you like. It's open forum. 888-318-7884. Hey, the early bird special for the conference coming up. The conference is September 21st through 24th. That early bird special is going away at the end of this month. You save $50. And we've got special room prices for you. Check it all out at CatholicAnswersConference.com. CatholicAnswersConference.com, September 21st through 24th, right here in sunny San Diego. Right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy on Catholic Answers Live. This year, the Catholic Answers Conference turns its attention to the question of God in an age of unbelief. Join us September 21st through 24th in San Diego for I Believe in God, featuring very special guest, Scott Hahn, and an all-star lineup of speakers. Spend 4 fun days with your favorite Catholic Answers apologists. Seats are still available, but going fast. Use promo code EARLY to save $50 and register today at CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity. In the early church was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
As Catholic apologetics have gotten stronger, Protestant responses have gotten stronger as well. And now they have their own answers to rebut the standard Catholic proofs. Don't fret, we've got you covered. In his new book, Meeting the Protestant Response, apologist Carlo Broussard gives well-reasoned biblical answers to Protestant comebacks. Order your copy of Meeting the Protestant Response today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Jimmy Akin is our guest. And several calls dropped in the last few minutes, so there's lots of lines open if you want to call. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I don't actually know who's on line two. Does anybody? Oh,
it says
okay.
David.
Okay, good. We'll go to David then. David in Indianapolis, listening on 89.5 FM. Glad you're here, David. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Jimmy, I want to talk about a portion of the Bible that I've always kind of struggled with to understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the Old Testament in Genesis. It talks about Lot and his daughters. And I'll just paraphrase. It's a story about Lot. He's living in Sodom, and some angels come and visit him, and he takes them in and gives them hospitality. And then the people of Sodom come, and they want to rape the angels because they're so beautiful. And so he's like, no, I can't let you rape these men. That's against our ways. But I'll offer you my daughters. And they're like, no, we don't want your daughters. We want the angels. And so there's this conflict where he then offers his daughters to be raped by the crowd. And so, as I've always struggled to understand the morality. And remember, Lot is the one who got saved from Sodom. He's the moral man that got saved from this situation. So it has really always bothered me, and I was wondering what the teachings of the Catholic Church would interpret this story and the morality of that situation.
Okay, the Catholic Church does not have a teaching on the vast majority of Bible passages, and that includes this one. So there's no official interpretation of this passage, and scholars can take it in different ways. One thing that the passage does not mention is that the inhabitants of Sodom wanted to rape the men or have relations with the men because they were so beautiful. That's an inference. And they don't seem to realize that they're angels. They think they're just human men. And presumably they don't really care if on the assumption they're human men, they don't really care if this is consensual or not. It's not like they're determined to rape somebody. It could be if they brought out human men and they were fine with having relations, they would have been satisfied with that. But I think we can shed some light on the way on Lot's thinking here. It doesn't mean Lot was right, but it even though he is more righteous than the men of Sodom, and he ends up getting saved from the destruction of Sodom, we can at least enter into his thoughts to understand why he does what he does in making the offer of his daughters. One of the things that was very essential in ancient Near Eastern culture, and it's true in various cultures around the world that live in very precarious settings, like in desert or near desert environments, like in this part of the world, in the ancient Near East. One of the things about them is people lived in really dangerous situations. And if you traveled in the ancient world in these very precarious situations, you might not find food, you might not find water, you might not find shelter, you might be beset upon by wild beasts or by wild human beings who might attack you. And so there was a lot of danger involved in travel. And as a result, a social compact developed such that everybody had a right, who was traveling, had a right to be protected by the people they came across. So if someone showed up in your town, the righteous thing to do was to take them into your home and put them under your home's protection until they moved on, which was typically understood to be a very short period of time. I mean, you couldn't just set up shop and say, hey, I'm going to live here for 6 months. You know, you don't have a right to claim someone's hospitality and protection for that long, but you do for a night or maybe a couple of nights or something. And this was considered a very serious social obligation because everybody has need to travel from one time to another, and so everyone is going to need hospitality and protection. And therefore, in ancient Near Eastern thought, it was considered a very strong moral duty to offer hospitality and protection to travelers. And so these two apparent men, we know they're angels, but Lot and the Sodomites don't know that. These two men are travelers. They have been taken into Lot's home. He's offered them hospitality, and that implies he's also offering them protection. And so when the Sodomites want them brought out so they can have relations with them, that violates the protection that Lot has offered these men. And so what Lot is trying to do is find a solution. And now he recognizes what they want to do is horrible, and he's trying to find something that will pacify them but allow him to do his duties and protect the men that have come under his protection. And he's, they're adults, they're responsible moral agents. So they're also travelers, and all of that creates a special burden on him to try to find a way to protect them so that he is able to fulfill his duty to them as a host. Now, what does that mean for his daughters? Well, his daughters are unmarried, So they're not anybody's wife. So if you violated his daughters, you wouldn't be violating anybody's wife, which was considered worse in the ancient world than violating an unmarried woman. So that violation would be horrible, but women were frequently viewed as under the power of their father until such time as they got married. And so Lot could regard it as within his authority to allow his daughters to be violated in this way, at least in his mind. Now, he no doubt views that violation as horrible, but at least he views it as less horrible than the violation that's being proposed for the men who are under his protection. And, today we wouldn't look at it this way. If anything, we'd look at it in exactly the opposite light and say, hey, dude, your daughters are under your protection and they have a natural law right to your protection that travelers don't. And so we would look at it completely the opposite. But Lot is not a modern person. Lot is an ancient Near Easterner, and the calculus that he's performing between his duties as a host and protector of travelers versus his responsibilities as a father is different than the calculus we would perform today. So it's not to say that Lot is right in what he decides to do. Today we would look at it and say, no, dude, that's the wrong decision. But we can at least understand the calculus that Lot is performing here in proposing this. What he's trying to do is find the least horrible solution, and based on ancient Near Eastern mores, or I'm trying to think of a quick English synonym for mores that's a little more familiar, but based on the social moral principles that applied in the ancient Near East, and that the values that people in the ancient Near East had, to Lot, this solution appears to be less horrible than the one that the Sodomites are proposing.
David, that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, that was a very thoughtful answer. I don't know that it makes me feel any better, but I really appreciate the insight.
Well, and it's one of the things we have to do when reading ancient literature is we may not agree with everything that everybody does or proposes in ancient literature, but we can understand why they proposed it, at least if we enter into the thoughts and values that applied at the time to try to make sense out of what they're doing.
Again, thank you very much for the call. That brings us to the break. We'll take a break, right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Don't you feel sometimes like there's so many people in the world? How does he hear your prayer? Never think of that, huh? Everybody thinks of that. I'm only a little grain of sand on the seashore. Oh, but that's not true. See, God is God. And you and I have to let God be God. I don't know how he does it. He's God.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's Open Forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest, and lots of lines full. Now, let's go to Emma in Hayden, Michigan, listening or watching on YouTube. Emma, thanks for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I believe so, Emma.
I'm Emma from Idaho.
I knew that wasn't right. There was a miscommunication there, Emma. Sorry about that. Because I know you. I just messed up on that one. Sorry.
That's okay. So my son, who decided he's not a Christian at this time in his life, is really upset about the Gospel of Thomas,
Oh,
and I need some ammunition on how to refute it.
okay. Well, so for people who may not be familiar, the Gospel of Thomas is a list of sayings attributed to Jesus, and it is an early document. The question is how early. There have been some scholars who have proposed that the Gospel of Thomas dates from the 1st century. However, the majority of scholars believe that it dates from the 2nd century, and therefore it's considerably later than the 4 canonical Gospels. In terms of So that's one thing you can appeal to, which is the fact that the majority of scholars have looked at it and said, no, this is a later document, and it's not on the same level and does not have the same historical value as the 4 canonical Gospels. Another thing that you can do is appeal to the very last saying in the Gospel of Thomas. It's saying 114, unless I'm mistaken, and there's misremembering the number. It could be 115, but I believe it's 114. In saying 114, in the last saying in the Gospel of Thomas, the disciples are talking to Jesus about Mary Magdalene, and they are objecting to Mary Magdalene on the grounds that she's a woman. And it's like, how can a woman like her have eternal life? And Jesus says, hey, don't worry, dudes. I'm going to make her a man just like you. And there's a question that one could ask. Does that mean he's going to do a miracle and literally transform her into a male? Or is he speaking figuratively, and it means he's going to make her spiritually a male? But one way or another, whether it's literal or figurative, this doesn't speak well of women. It implies an intrinsic inferiority of women. Now, that clashes with modern sensibilities, and if your son has modern sensibilities, it could help alert him to a problem with the Gospel of Thomas, unless your son thinks you're intrinsically inferior to your husband because you're a woman. And actually, Emma, the fact you're a woman means you could sell this one. You know, you could be very persuasive on this point with your son about how this clashes with modern sensibilities and with the teaching of the New Testament and Jesus's own high regard for women. And elsewhere in the New Testament, I mean, Jesus clearly respected women. Women were the first witnesses to the resurrected tomb. Jesus elevated the status of women. His mom is the greatest of the saints. Jesus praises women in ways that he doesn't praise his 12 disciples. And elsewhere in the New Testament, you have St. Paul saying, in Christ there is no male or female. So we're all fundamentally equal. We may have different roles, but we're fundamentally equal in God's eyes. And consequently, this last saying of the Gospel of Thomas not only clashes with modern sensibilities, it also clashes with the teaching of Jesus and the New Testament. So that's another sign that the Gospel of Thomas is not to be relied upon. Then there are the arguments that convince most scholars that this is a late document. One of the things you find when you go through the Gospel of Thomas is that many of the sayings it contains are either identical to or very similar to sayings that we find in the 4 canonical Gospels, especially the first 3, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And the question is, well, so, okay, we have these sayings. It looks like there's a literary connection between them. What direction does the causal arrow point? Are the synoptics pulling from the Gospel of Thomas, or are the Gospels and Thomas pulling from some other source, or is Thomas pulling from the Gospels? And very careful scholars have been over this in great detail, looking at the way that the words are phrased, at the words with which the individual sayings are phrased. And there are ways by comparing different sources to figure out which source is original and which one is borrowing, because you can track the different ways that the sayings alter and reconstruct the history of how they got to that point. This is known as source criticism. And very scholarly, very competent source critics have looked at Thomas and the Synoptic Gospels and said, Thomas is borrowing from the Synoptics. That's where he's getting a lot of these sayings. He's read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and consequently he's adapting sayings that we find in the canonical Gospels, and he's readjusting them. He's readjusting them for his own purposes. If you want, you could get your son a book, and you might need to get it used, and it probably comes in some booksellers may have it for less expensive than others, but there's a book by an evangelical scholar named Mark Goodacre, and Mark is just M-A-R-K, just like the gospel. Goodacre is like a good plot of land, Goodacre, Goodacre. And it's called Thomas and the Gospels, the case for Thomas's familiarity with the Synoptics. And that makes the essential point that needs to be made. If Thomas is familiar with the Synoptics, then it's clearly later than the Synoptics, and that means it's dependent on them for a bunch of its information, and it's likely to be less reliable, as we also have other grounds for saying. So the book, once again, is Thomas and the Gospels. It's by Mark Goodacre, and you could either get that and read it yourself and digest some of the arguments, or you could get it and just give it as a present to your son and say, here, I think you might find this helpful.
Em, I'm going to leave it there because there are so many on the line, but I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you very much for the call. I'm going to go to Tennessee, where Thomas is listening on the iHeartRadio app. Thomas, welcome. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, thank you for having me. Jimmy, I wanted to ask you about discernment and how to know if you're doing the will of God. And I asked this in about my specific circumstances. I left a town where I had Adoration Chapel. Two of them, I spent a lot of time in there, and now we moved, and I don't have that anymore. I feel there's a part of me that feels like I abandoned God, and I'm kind of curious if I made the wrong decision. In the place we moved to, I lost my job on top of that, so I'm kind of wondering if I disobeyed God's will, or if this is maybe part of His plan for me during the trials and all that. I was kind of curious if you could give me any insight on that.
Okay, so the first parameter for understanding whether we're doing God's will is understanding what God actually requires. And God does not require that you live in a particular town or that you live near an adoration chapel. You can adore God from anywhere you want. You can adore God in your local church. You can adore Christ in the Eucharist in your local church, because he's in the Eucharist in your local church. He doesn't have to be exposed. You can just go sit in church in front of wherever the tabernacle is and adore him. He doesn't have to be exposed. He's still there. You could stay at home and adore Christ in the tabernacle in your church or in all of the churches of the world. So we shouldn't think that God mandates a particular devotional practice like this. Consequently, God is not punishing you for moving to a new location. Now, I don't know the reasons that you moved. I assume you had serious reasons that you moved, and those would be another reason that God is not punishing you. You thought you'd have a better opportunity in this town, or you needed to be with family or something like that. The fact you lost your job in the new town is not a punishment from God. So stop punishing yourself thinking that it is. It ain't. In terms of what you want to do now, well, take another look around, see if you can get a good job either where you are, or if you need to move back, or if you need to move to a third location. But as long as you are not violating a moral law, you're allowed to have creativity. God doesn't present us with just one option at every juncture in life. He shows us a range of options, many of which are morally legitimate. And as long as you're picking something that's morally legitimate, one option may be better than another, but he knows we've got limited knowledge, and we're free to pick from any of the good options. Well, okay, so you do a calculation and figure out what does the best thing seem be at this point. But don't think God is punishing you, because he's not. You haven't done anything morally wrong. You haven't done anything sinful. God only punishes sins. He doesn't punish other things. And consequently, take some pressure off yourself. Just calmly look at the situation, pray about it, think about it, make the best decision you can, and trust God with the results. And if the results are great, wonderful. If the results are not great, well, maybe figure something else out.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much, Jimmy. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Thomas, thank you for the call. It's Open Forum. Jimmy Akin is our guest. Now we go to Wisconsin, where Joe is watching on YouTube. Joe, go ahead with your question.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Since we're limited on time, maybe Jimmy could do a couple rapid fires. One, a controversial magisterial reversal on a non-definitive teaching. Two, is it possible the world is under 20,000 years old and God just made it appear old? And three, did Jesus really say, he who is without sin cast the first stone? Because I know there's controversy among like biblical scholars on whether that was initially in the
if I'm gonna do rapid fire, I'm gonna need to get to it. In regard to the first question, what's a controversial non-infallible magisterial teaching that's been reversed? I don't know of a particularly controversial one, because they tend not to get reversed until it would no longer be controversial. But an example of a non-infallible teaching that has been reversed is the idea that limbo definitely exists. Limbo is the proposed solution for what happens to the souls of unbaptized children. It was originally proposed as a theological deduction, and eventually it never became infallible, but it did enter common teaching of the church, or common doctrine. However, further theological reflection led to people realizing, hey, there are other possibilities for what could happen. And in the early 21st century, Pope Benedict approved a document from the International Theological Commission that said there are other options. Limbo is still an option, but the church at this point doesn't teach that it's the option, that it's the solution to this question. You can read about that in a document put out by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith called Hope of Salvation for Infants Dying Without Baptism. The second question you asked was what again?
Hey, hang on, Joe. I think I got you on hold. Go ahead, Joe. What was the second question?
But it appears
old. The age of the earth. Okay, so the idea that the earth is under 20,000 years old, but God made it look as if it's older than that, is inconsistent with God's truthfulness, which is a part of his divine goodness. If God were deceiving us by making something look older than it is, like, for example, creating starlight from distant galaxies that aren't actually millions of light years away, but we can see supernovas exploding in them. If he created that starlight 20,000 light years away from Earth and just let it fall in, he's showing us fictions in the sky every night. And that seems inconsistent with God's truthfulness. If you'd like more information about that, I looked into this in a 3-part series on Mysterious World. It's episodes 119, 120, and 121. You can get to it by going to mysterious.fm/119, mysterious.fm/120, and mysterious.fm/121 for a full discussion of the young Earth hypothesis, including that one, that aspect of it. The third question about did Jesus really say, let he who is without sin cast the first stone? This is in the account of the woman caught in adultery, which is found in most editions of John's Gospel. There is a question that scholars have about, was it in the original edition of John's Gospel or was it added? And was it originally in Luke's Gospel? Because it's similar to Luke in some ways. So there's an open question about that with regard to this passage. Unfortunately, I really can't go into it in more depth, but I did write an article about it for Catholic.com. So go to Catholic.com, search on Jimmy Akin, woman caught in adultery.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, everybody who called today. That'll wrap it up for us. Mysterious.fm is where you can find Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Jimmy, thanks for a great hour.
My pleasure, Cy Kellett.
All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.